This is Jared Dowman's Collapse, published by Penguin, a parable about ecological disaster.
This is wonderful because he explores how civilizations have collapsed in the past and questions whether we are collapsing and in what areas we're collapsing. And I like it because towards the end, he has great hope, as I have, totally optimistic about what we can do with the world in the future. I think we can get it right. I think he's written beautifully. I think he paints good images and moves on and paints the picture, and I think it does very, very accessible.
This is David Bodanis' Electric Universe, published by Little Brown. It's about how electricity powers the universe, as well as how we think.
The Electric Universe is an attempt to unify electricity, which of course is a unitary subject, all the way from physics to machines to the workings of your brain. It seems like an enormous task, but in a very short book, David Bodanis succeeds triumphantly. It's well written. It doesn't have any equations in it, or almost no equations in it. It's the ideal kind of prose. It's like Charles Darwin's prose. It's the best kind of science writing for me because it makes a very, very difficult subject simple.
This is Arthur Miller's Empire of the Stars, published by Little Brown. It's a biography of the physicist Chandra and how he was beset by racism and intellectual intolerance.
I think this particular book merits the shortlist because it is set against the backdrop of a very important time in history, the waning power of the empire and one man's struggle to be heard in the scientific world. And I think in terms of turning people onto science, putting it against such a human story makes it very exciting, very readable and very accessible. I think the style in which the book is written and really portraying his struggle as a scientist and his tenacity to be understood is really conveyed very powerfully in this book. And although we're trying to encourage people to read and understand about science, that does come across very powerfully in the narrative style, but it doesn't ignore the human story, which I think is always of value.
This is Michio Kaku's Parallel World, published by Penguin, an intriguing book about cosmology. Life, the universe, and everything, all in one book.
It's all about parallel universes, about time travel, about black holes.
If you really want to be gobsmacked, why read fiction when you can read this sort of stuff?
It's very, very clear. I mean, this is enormously difficult stuff to understand if you don't have a grounding in physics. And he's the first writer that I've ever read who has written it in a way that made it absolutely clear.
Although there's an awful lot of hypothesis in this. This is probably in here, the seeds of where we came from, where we're going. It's riveting stuff. This is Nick Lane's Power, Sex, Suicide by Oxford University Press. It's about how single cells like bacteria turned into us.
Well, the book's written by a professional scientist, and it's actually a subject which is quite close to my own, and I learned a lot from it.
I think the thing that made this book stand out above so many of the others I read is really the excitement of the ideas. It's very, very new.
The thesis is so breathtaking and so obviously right, and it is right. It really is engrossing, this book.
Don't expect to read this and laugh every other page, but do expect to read this and learn a lot more about the meaning of life.
This is Vivian Paris, The Truth About Hormones, published by Atlantic Books, an intriguing guide to what powers us and make us act the way we do.
She clearly knows what she's talking about. She's done her research and she makes it very popular and accessible to the mainstream reader.
In a way, it's surprising that this one has got in the last 6, because Vivian is a television journalist. But it's good. It's wonderful. It's perhaps the most readable of all 6 books.
I think the style in which she writes is very personable. She engages the reader with perhaps her own little asides about having sons, and I know what this is like. And I think bringing herself into the story makes it interesting.
And the science is good as well as her anecdotal stories. I liked it very much.